Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I am back with a very simple illustration. I can't get enough of the Holbein Acrylic Gouache, so I'm going to use that again today. So I'm going to be painting a tram and at night because that's my favorite time of the day in the countryside. So first I am going to sketch it out. I start with the tram first. It's just going to be a very simple landscape because I kind of still want to try to get used to this acrylic gouache. Then I start by painting the background. So I'm going to start with the first layer by just kind of mapping out the colors. Here it looks a bit watery because I just want a very thin layer and then I can adjust as I go along. So I'm painting the sky in dark blue and a patch of purple on the right side of the canvas just to give the sky a little bit more details. And then I'm going to add a bush here so that it doesn't look too plain, but I didn't want to have any trees or anything because there's going to be wires and antennas in the sky later. So and then over here I'm going to paint it in dark olive green because it's the nighttime and I wanted it to be a bit darker. For the tram, I wanted to add a bit of color, so I'm painting it in red and the bottom half in blue. But since everything is in a night setting, so I've mixed all the paints with a little bit of grey. For the windows, I'm painting them in dark blue right now, but I'll be adding lights to it later just to brighten up the painting, and then black for the rails and a slightly lighter shade of olive for the tracks. Now that the first layer is done, it looks a little bit like a watercolor painting, but I'm going in for the second layer right now and I'm going to apply a more generous amount of paint. I like it during dusk when the night is not totally dark yet, but there's still a gentle faint glow in the sky. So I'm adding a bit of purple pale on the right side of the canvas, and around it I'm just adding Prussian blue and cobalt blue. But it looks very rough now, but I'm gonna go back to it on the third layer. For the bush in the background, I'm mixing it with blue and green and just a little bit of black to get that super dark green look. And then I'm working on the tram. Like I said, I'm mixing everything with a little bit of grey. So on the top part to get that dark maroon color, I'm using red mixed with a little bit of dark grey. Darker on the front of the tram, and on the side just a little bit more red to make it lighter. I add a white line in the middle to give it a little bit more details, and at the bottom I mix sky blue and just a little bit of grey. So I want the landscape around it to be pretty dark, so I'm gonna use a very dark shade of olive. If you do not have olive green, what I do is I mix dark green and dark brown and just a little bit of black or grey to get that dark olive shade. And then for the railroad, for the tram line, I mix a little bit of yellow ochre to brighten up that dark shade of olive green. And then just for the tracks here, I add Mars black, and for the wheels as well. And then I fill up the windows again in a dark shade of blue. So the second layer still looks pretty rough, so I'm going in for the third layer right now. I usually like to do it this way, layer by layer, so I get to edit or make any changes as I go. And this is the Acrylic Gouache by Holbein. It dries pretty fast to get that nice matte gouache kind of finish, so I need to kind of add a little bit more water and kind of go in like layer by layer to smoothen the whole thing out. So I'm going to first paint the sky. I've actually darkened it a little bit. I've added more grey to the sky blue and the cobalt blue, and then I'm going to take a brush. This is kind of like a smaller wool brush, and I'm going to just sway it back and forth with purple pale on this side of the canvas to create that kind of slight glow in the sky. The purple looks a little bit blue right now because water reactivates the gouache, so it's kind of blended. The blue blends with the purple. So because of that, once that's kind of settled in, I add more purple with a little bit of titanium white, and I kind of just dab the tip of the brush so it gets a little bit of cloud shapes in the sky. I think blending with wash is awesome, especially when it's wet. It's very easy to mix the colors together, and then it kind of just blends into one gradient. So for the landscape in the background, I extended the bush towards the back and just create a bit more shapes to it. The rest of this part is quite easy. I make sure to fill up all these blank white spaces that you see, and I add a more generous amount of paint, and just to make sure that it has an even finish, because as for now you can see like all this the paint is not properly blend, and there's all these white patches and uneven patches. So to fix this is quite easy. Just use more paint and a flat white brush, especially for all this like white spaces, and then just go back and forth and cover the whole thing until it is smooth. I leave the tram for the last, and I'm working on it right now because it has the most details. I usually like to use a size 000 or 00 brush when working with thin lines like this. So I just reapply the paint, and like the previous steps, make sure that all the white spaces are filled. I add more red on this side of the tram to create a difference, contrast between the front side, just a little bit more color and variety. And for the line in the middle, I'm using gray pale and a little bit of white. So on the other side of the tram, I use more white and more gray for the front of the tram. Once I've painted these windows as well, I want to brighten it up by adding lights and orange. So once the paint has dried, I used a thin brush and I go inside and I kind of just drag out this orange around the windows, and for the back ones I just draw a straight line across. And then I use orange yellow and blend it together with the orange. I like adding a little bit of bright colors to kind of make it pop, especially in a dark landscape. And then I'm going to use titanium white, and I draw a line across from inside the windows and add a few white circles to indicate the light bulb. Then I mix a little bit of yellow and I add the headlights to the tram on both sides here, and another light at the bottom of the tram. But this one I use a bit more orange, just draw a line here, and on the rails I add a little bit of reflection of the light. So in the earlier part of this video, I said I didn't want any trees in the background because I wanted to add a couple of electrical poles or some cables just to kind of have some things in the sky. I don't know if I actually like adding these kind of cables because it gives this very kind of like urban scape look to the whole piece. I like to use an angular brush for this because it's so much easier to draw thin lines, but I felt that it wasn't enough. So I'm going to add a few strands of wild grass or wild plants on this right side of this painting to add more depth to it because it looks a little bit 2D right now. So for the plants, I'm just mixing a little bit of pale gray to the green, and then I'm just adding a few leaves and thin strands here, nothing too fancy. And I'm quite happy to finish. I actually really like the matte finish of the gouache, this acrylic gouache. I hope to be painting a few more and try to get a hang of it. Anyway, I hope you like this super simple piece, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Goodbye.